everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of the California Proprietarian Podcast, also known as CA PropCast. I am your host, Philip Young. And on this show, as you are probably familiar by now, we discuss all kinds of issues in this country in the various culture wars and in economic policy debates that have implications for the individual natural right to private property, which we on this show believe comes from God. We believe that we're endowed by our Creator as individuals, as a natural right, with the right to our private property. And so we like to discuss the various, debates and discourses going on in this country that might impact that. And for tonight's round, we have a Mr. Dan. Could you pronounce your name for the audience?
Kapelovitz.
Kapelovitz. Thank you so much, sir. And we brought him on. He is a former candidate for district attorney here in Los Angeles County, running against the current incumbent, George Gascon. And we brought him on to discuss what motivated him to do that, and to discuss what societal issues made him feel compelled to take the extraordinary step of running for one of the more prominent offices in this country there. So with that, I'll kick it over to Dan here, and he can explain a little bit about his background, his resume, his career, and what led him to his candidacy.
All right, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Los Angeles. Been doing that for over a decade. I did run for Los Angeles District Attorney in this last primary. Didn't win. I knew I was a long shot candidate, but I wanted to get my message out there. I did a bunch of debates where I could get my views out there and interviews and things like that. And I guess I'm still doing it based on that. So I like to run for office, even though I know I'm a long shot candidate. I ran for governor during the recall, though I was against the recall, but I wanted to be an alternate. And then I ran for attorney general, but the goal there was just to get 2% of the vote for the Green Party, because to be on the ballot, you have to get 2% or have a certain number of registered voters or get 2% in a statewide election. So we did meet that. And then I decided I wasn't going to run for DA. I thought about it, and then I wasn't going to. And then I entered the race pretty late because I was so outraged by some things that happened on my cases with this current DA, even though I agree with Gascon's, most of his policies that he says that are on paper. And in fact, maybe they don't go far enough in my mind, but he has no control over these line deputies who just do whatever they want. And so that was my main critique, because I wanted to say what was really going on in the courtrooms, because I don't think people even realize it. I don't think I am supporting him, but he's never tried a case. I've never seen him in court. I mean, I'm sure he visits people maybe, I don't know. He rarely is in court. I don't think, he's a smart guy, he knows a lot about the law, but I don't think he really understands what's going on day to day in these hundreds of courtrooms all over the county.
Now, he used to be both a police officer and a district attorney up in Frisco, right? I think he did before he came down here.
He was a police officer in L.A., I think.
Oh, okay.
I think he was like chief of police or something. I don't know his resume totally. And then he was, the district attorney in San Francisco. I think he got appointed, and I think he ran and won. And then he was something in another, like Arizona or something.
Okay.
I mean, he has a lot of administrative experience. He had the most of any candidate.
And in all of that time and all those positions he held, he never personally litigated a case? That seems very strange.
Well, cops don't litigate cases. And then he went to law school, I guess, while he was an officer. And then if you're the head DA, I don't think he didn't work his way up the office. He started as a head. They don't try cases. He's never tried a case. Yeah,
because that was what was strange to me is like, of course, I figured as a cop he probably wasn't the one to chiefly litigate cases that he dealt with, but it seems weird that during his entire time at the DA's office in Frisco that he wouldn't have. But I guess if you're saying that he started out at the top and he started out as chief administrator, I guess that kind of makes it make sense a little bit.
Yeah, no actual DA tries cases.
Except maybe like in a very small county.
Maybe
right?
or on TV, maybe the DA's like, I'm going to try this.
Oh, yeah.
Or something. Maybe it's a county where it's super small, maybe, yeah. Even administrator, there's like a bunch of administrators that would never try cases. All the higher level people don't actually deal with cases, do their own cases.
Yeah, he's more of a paper pusher, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, he's a head guy. He's like the boss, and so.
Now, I guess policy-wise, because you were saying that you support a lot of his policies in theory, and even that you think some of them don't quite go far enough. Of course, a lot of people, including some on the left, but I would say mostly people that tend to be right-leaning, probably perceive Gascon as an excessively progressive and excessively lenient prosecutor. Do you think that Gascon's relatively what we might call progressive approach to prosecuting alleged or suspected criminals? Do you think that's made any contribution whatsoever to the rise in what we would say generally nonviolent retail crimes?
No, and I'll tell you why. For one thing, like I said, nothing's really changed. So we haven't even, I mean, he has these policies that I think are great. They've never been tested. Because they haven't actually been implemented. I mean, some of them have. He wasn't trying children as adults, although he's kind of backed off on that in certain cases, which I think was a good thing. He hasn't, he doesn't allege gang allegations, which I think is good. They're pretty much inherently racist. He was trying not to allege strikes, but then he got sued by the DA Association, and now it's actually going to the Supreme Court. They haven't actually ruled on it yet, but he was forced to allege prior strikes, which has tons of problems over punishing people. It affects different communities differently, etc. So yeah, his policies are good. So the theft stuff, my whole theory is that not that he doesn't charge them. It's a myth that he doesn't charge these retail theft crimes. If someone goes into a store, steals stuff, and they're caught, they're arrested, or even if they're not arrested, let's say the cops cite them out, but they'll usually arrest them, and they submit their police reports to the DA. He files them every time. He doesn't say, "Oh no, let's let this guy." It's a total myth that he's letting people go, and so now, because there's this whole myth. Well, fun thing, a lot of cops, I think, are claiming like, oh, he won't do anything. What's the point of even arresting people? So they're claiming that they don't have to. What's the point of arresting people? And using it as an excuse. But if they're arrested and they're charged. I get those cases all the time. I get tons of retail theft cases, and they're almost always felonies because if it's over $950, it can be a felony. So, or if it's two or more people, they could be charged with conspiracy. Conspiracy to take a piece of gum can be charged as a felony. Because or if it's, or let's say you go into a 7-Eleven, you take a candy bar, and the employee grabs you and you shake them off. That's now a robbery. That's now a strike. It's called an Estes robbery. So these are all felonies. So this whole thing about Prop 47, it doesn't matter. It's not. They're going to try to change the law. It's not going to affect retail crime. But the problem is now people believe he doesn't do anything. And so now they're emboldened to commit these crimes. So like, let's say you told everyone, hey, you can rob a bank. Nothing's going to happen to you. The DA won't even charge bank robberies. Well, guess what? Bank robberies are probably going to skyrocket because now everyone thinks it's like free money. So now people think it's free money or free clothing or whatever because the fear mongers who want to like say he won't do anything. I mean, I think they want crime to go up so they can get into office. So it's really sick in my mind. And so that's the only effect I think having a progressive DA has on these theft crimes. I mean, nothing he does actually does it.
Do you think the rise in the retail theft crimes is more attributable to factors like inflation and unemployment, difficult economic times, things of that nature? Would that be kind of your theory there?
I actually think a lot of it is sort of copycat crimes because I think you see it, because at first you'd watch on the news, they'd say, oh, the smash and grabs. And you'd see like this one video over and over again, like one single smash and grab, like up in San Francisco. And then like that's basically the only one that happened. And then I think people saw those, hey, wait, we can just, take stuff in a store. The security guard's not going to do anything because all of them are told not to interfere. It's dangerous. And like, oh, well, then we're just going to do it, And so I think a lot of it's just like people didn't even think about doing it until it's all on the news and everything. So I think that's one rise. Maybe COVID.
Yeah.
I think people don't, after COVID, don't want to work as much. I think I've noticed that, like, they don't want to work at home. And I mean, supposedly the job, like, there's a lot of jobs now. I don't know. They're probably not that good of jobs. And, it could be economics or all kinds of things. There's so many things drive crime. That's the other thing about this. I was trying to, like, sort of show the people in these debates is, like, they're like, oh, it's all Gascon's fault. Like, the facts that crime goes up or down has almost nothing to do with who the DA is. I mean, do you think and also a lot of these policies are critiquing about or criticizing about, it's like whether someone would get like a gang allegation. So if someone commits a murder, they'll get like 25 years to life. And there's a gang allegation, maybe they'll get 50 years to life.
Yes.
But we're not going to know the effects of that for at least 25 years. So it's like, they don't know if that we really need to punish people 50 years to life as opposed to 25 years to life. So all these changes, we wouldn't even know what the repercussions were.
About the gang enhancements, I think that's what you were just referring to there. I remember earlier you said that you believe those are inherently racist or institutionally racist, perhaps. Could that be rectified by having a policy of saying, we don't care what kind of gang it is. We don't care if it's the Aryan Brotherhood or the Peckerwood Boys, the Latin Kings, the Bloods, the Crips, the Tiny Rascals, that's an Asian gang, Hells Angels, Mongols, what have you, biker gangs. If we just say, across the board, we don't care what the racial or ethnic background of the gang is. If we have reason to believe that you did this, as part of a, gang ritual or something like that, we're going to hit you with the enhancement. Could it be?
Well, that's what the law is. I mean, the law doesn't say it has to be a Black or Latino gang or something.
No, of course not.
But so, that's in reality, that's the law. But I mean, that's the law in the books. In reality, I've never had a white gang case. I've never had a deputy gang, a lot of deputy gangs. Never had a deputy gang case. I heard that the Juggalos in like Illinois or somewhere or Michigan are considered a gang, but I've never had that here. Yeah, and Hell's Angels can be charged with gangs and all kinds of stuff. But you never charge like the Proud Boys as a gang or the, or these white Aryan groups. But that's not even why it's it's because, if a gang, there's one thing if they really, I don't know, commit a crime as a gang or really for the benefit of a gang, say, or something. But what really happens is like some person who's considered a gang member will maybe go into a 7-Eleven and steal a candy bar. I mean, that's kind of not really that case, but let's say they do that. Then the DA will say, oh, well, he's taking that candy bar because the money he gets from selling the candy bar, that's going to go to the Mexican mafia, and so he's like supporting the gang, or he's trying to intimidate the 7-Elevens to show that their gang's really powerful, so that's for the benefit of the gang. Or so it's like, where if it's a white person did the exact same thing, they're not charged with a gang enhancement. And gang enhancement can turn some things that aren't felonies into felonies, can make some things life counts that aren't life count. I mean, it's really insane. All these enhancements, that's one thing Gascon's policies are against, is all these like enhancements which can more than double the punishment for the underlying crime, and they do affect people, poor people, and people of color more than rich white people. And it's just, it's just over punishing. There's studies that the good of keeping someone in prison for. Eventually, it's too much. It's over punishing someone. It's not doing any good, and it could probably do harm because these people have to eventually going to go into society, and now they're all this time they've been in prison, they've been institutionalized, and so
more trouble reintegrating.
Yeah, so it's just, and it costs. It costs the government, the people, taxpayers. And like I said, the gang. The fact that they're just they really apply to Black and Latino men mainly, and they just make basically so you have higher sentences for certain kinds of people. Obviously, there has to be really a gang, but
you were saying you'd never seen a case where, for example, a member of the Proud Boys was hit with a gang enhancement. Is that because the Proud Boys, obviously, they were founded on an ideological basis, whereas most of the organizations we think of as gangs were generally not founded on ideology? They were founded either as protection rackets or for their members to make money through illegal means. Do you think that could factor into that decision?
Well, I just use the Proud Boys as an example, but they've probably never been deemed a criminal street gang, really. they have to like engage together in criminal activities. But I'm saying I know some people say they do that, but I don't think it has to do with their ideology. I mean, you could have ideology and most gangs, I think, were started just for people to protect themselves. Or that's why most kids get involved. They're like 12 years old and they live in a neighborhood that's dangerous and there's gangs. And so they join a gang for protection. They're not like they want to become a criminal, master criminal or anything.
That's right.
So I think that's sort of why gangs maybe started, for just self-protection. And yeah, I guess, by law, they're supposed to commit crime. It's not illegal technically to be in a gang.
Right, yeah.
As long as you're not furthering criminal activity or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if the Proud Boys are actually a gang, but I'm just saying there could be these groups that you could consider gangs, or these groups that engage in illegal activity together, and they're not charged. I mean, I don't know if there are that many Proud Boys in LA County. I mean, I'd never seen it. Maybe they have been charged like that.
Now, speaking of enhancements, the other category of enhancement that I've heard that George Gascon is generally pretty hesitant to apply is firearm enhancements. And that does leave me scratching my head, because I figure if someone commits a violent, forcible felony with a firearm, I would think it would make sense to hit them with an enhancement if they hold up a liquor store at gunpoint. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what's your scoop on that, on the issue of firearm enhancements as opposed to gang enhancements?
Well, I don't know. They do file firearm enhancements almost every time. I don't know if it's against his policies or not. He's generally against just enhancements in general, and that's one of the most common enhancements. It's weird because sometimes though they don't even make sense. They're almost like double punishing, because like assault with a semi-automatic weapon then can also be enhanced when use of a firearm. Well, obviously used a firearm, so it's like you're getting double punished. But I think his thing is more just against enhancements in general, just because they, just the crime enough is usually, the sentence for just underlying crime is enough for the purposes of punishment.
I guess the logic, though, is that, if somebody holds a gun to somebody during a robbery, that should probably be treated more seriously than, say, they just snatch something out of the person's arms.
Right, that's true.
That's and I think maybe that's what most people are thinking when they hear that, George Gascon doesn't want to apply those kinds of enhancements, is they're probably sitting there going, well, in that case, it probably should be treated more severely. That's...
right, I can see that. But, well, the thing is also, let's say a gun crime's punishable, usually a triad, so it's like 2 years, or some crime is like 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, say. And so, if you rob if you do one of these robberies called the Estes robbery I saw about, where you just run out of the store and they grab you and you push them or something, they're going to offer a low term or probation, whereas if you use a gun, they might offer high term. So it's like there is a lot of leeway within what's already available without the enhancements. Like if you have no record, you're going to get a better offer than if you have a record, if it's more egregious the way you do it. And the other weird thing is now they kind of changed the law. So these triads, they changed the law where the presumptive sentence is the middle term, unless there's some aggravating factor. And Gascon's policy is to allege aggravating factors whenever you can.
Okay.
And so he is seeking the high term, or he's seeking at least to have the coercive effect of having the high term on the table. And you can almost get the aggravating factor, because it could be something like sophistication or planning. And that's almost everything, or vulnerable victim, which is almost everything. And and so they always could get it. And if he's really against enhancements, I don't know why. The LA Times was shocked when I told him this, but I don't know why the policy is to allege these every single time. Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, of course, I think traditionally enhancements are applied, or at least more serious charges are applied when the alleged victim is like a child or an elderly person, right? I mean, that's...
Well, there's certain crimes that have that, like elder abuse, or... I mean, sex crimes, obviously, with children
against
are considered way worse. And I guess, that might be something to take into factor when you're thinking of punishment. But a lot of crimes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the victim is, unless there's an actual statute that deals with it. I think robbery of a 17-year-old is treated the same as robbery of a 30-year-old. So that's, unless except for like elder abuse and sex crimes, I don't think most crimes do deal with like that. But yeah, if you beat up a little kid, obviously they're going to take it a lot more serious than if you have a mutual fight with someone at a bar or something,
Right, just a couple of grown men agreeing to
or if they don't agree, if you get in a regular fight and you're the aggressor, and that's going to be a lot less. It is less serious.
Yeah, not treated nearly as seriously as if.
But there's also an enhancement for great bodily injury.
Yeah.
So the more you injure someone, the more likely to get that. And
I have noticed that because I'm a huge fan of those pred busting shows online where those guys catch grown men trying to meet with minors for sex, and then they call the cops, and sometimes the guy gets arrested. I've noticed that the LA County DA's office, they tend to go after those guys pretty hard. Like, they'll charge them with attempted lewd and lascivious battery on a minor. So I was pleasantly surprised that the DA's office here tends to, really go after those guys that try to, have sex with minors and things like that.
Yeah, I've never had one of those cases. I heard when that show was going on, To Catch a Predator, there were a lot of cases like that, but then a lot of them were getting thrown out because there really was a lot of weird entrapment going on, and the groups that like set up the meetings, they're not law enforcement. They're these weird like vigilante groups. So there are some weird things about what actually lured them there. I've never dealt with it. I just heard that, and that was more before I became a lawyer, when that show was really popular. But
sometimes there's hesitancy to prosecute due to issues with the custody of evidence, I guess. Like if the cops weren't supervising the whole thing, there sometimes district attorneys have issues with, how the evidence was collected, like the chat logs, or the recorded phone calls. They might think, if this part of the custody of evidence wasn't secure, is that evidence reliable? I've heard about them not wanting to prosecute because they had concerns about that.
It's weird. Whenever they have like undercover like police pretending to be prostitutes, and they try to like catch people trying to like be their pimp or whatever, or solicit them to be a John. Right. They don't record it for some reason. Oh. And so it's always their word. And I don't know why they never record these. It's really weird. Sometimes, think they would. Yeah, you think they would, but for some reason, that's often their policy. And some of those, like, it's like they're almost creating crime out of nothing. Like they're like wanting crime. Like they're not even preventing anything. It's kind of weird. Some of these weirds, they put so much money into these things, and it's that's true. I mean, you would think that they'd want body cams to record evidence for prosecution in those cases. So I do have questions about that. Now, another major policy of Gascon's office that I think has attracted a lot of attention from the media and a lot of wider controversy is how he's often refused to try juvenile suspects as adults. Right. And actually, I have some sympathy for that position when it comes to relatively minor offenses. Like, if you have a case where a 14-year-old shoplifts a little bit, I could understand, treating him with some leniency, especially if he comes from a really difficult home situation. The issue I have is when minors will commit like a particularly heinous crime, like a rape, for example. If the crime is particularly violent and heinous, I do think even if they're a minor, that they should be charged as an adult, because when, a 14-year-old rapes somebody, he's a dangerous person. And he has to be dealt with accordingly. I mean, what would you say about, concerns that people might have along those lines? Yeah, I can understand why they would want like a 17-year-old who commits murder to be treated like an adult. Right, yeah. But even like, I mean, there are rules different for like even up to 25 years because there's youth offenders, and there's all these studies that the brain doesn't really mature until like mid-20s. And so, I mean, do you really want to put someone in prison for life without the possibility of parole when they're 17 years old? I'm a totally different person than I was when I was 17. I'm sure you were too. Same here. Yeah. Now, I know obviously the victim doesn't care if they get killed by a 17-year-old or a 20-year-old, and it's horrible. And so I can understand from the victim's perspective how, you want this guy. Well, obviously he's a danger. Nobody wants a dangerous person loose. But I think a lot of these people, they're not going to get better by just putting them in prison forever. Yeah, I mean, they do still get punished, but then they get released when they're 25 or whatever as a juvenile, which people say is not enough. But I know people that have sort of done that, even murder, and like it's something like they would never do, like even a year later, it's just some crazy weird situation, and they went to they're in custody till they're 25. Once they're 25, I mean, there's this thing, that's the worst thing. They don't live a day without thinking about how horrible it was. They did that, because they're mature then. So I don't know. I do think we shouldn't treat children like adults.
Yeah, I'm with you for, the relatively minor things. I guess the more heinous the crime, the more hesitant I am to be lenient, because studies have repeatedly shown that somebody who is like a child molester or a rapist, those people very, very rarely change. Like even, murderers can change at much higher rates than, sex offenders. So I guess my concern would be if somebody's committed like an act of sexual violence, even as a minor, we have to take into consideration the fact that it's very rare that we can actually effectively rehabilitate such people. And I guess that's what would concern me about not trying those people as adults. I mean, do you kind of see where I'm coming from?
I know you're talking. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, there's like yeah, I mean, murder. Like most cases of murder, they're kind of, unless they're a serial killer, it's like kind of some weird, once in a lifetime weird situation or something. So yeah, they're not. And I understand. Yeah, child molesters, like they usually do continue to do it. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. But also, if you're a minor, you're molesting. Depends how old. If you're like 17 having sex with a 16-year-old,
right? Yeah,
not that's even like the same crime or whatever. But
no, definitely not.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely see that but I don't know if people can change and they can get rehabilitated, and maybe they need to be in like a mental health situation instead of a prison or something. They need. Actually, I heard some states now like trying to get castration.
Oh, okay.
Legalized, which I'm not really for castration, but and they already have chemical castration where they give you, that can be reversed.
And of course, I think all decent people feel badly for a kid who grows up in a really bad home life. Maybe they're getting abused, maybe they're getting neglected, and then they end up going down the wrong path as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, almost all those cases are like, most people don't want to go, hey, I want to be evil, I want to do the horrible crimes, and it's like either they have mental problems, or they're like abused, and I mean, I think it's almost like 100% of child molesters were molested themselves, and not that every person molested becomes a child molester, but
certainly not.
So I mean, almost all these people have had horrible upbringings and abuse, and so do we really want to, just be so, seek retribution all the time and throw people in prison forever and just throw away more lives? And I understand we got to protect people. Obviously, we don't want, I mean, that's why I'm like, we got to get to the root of the problem, which isn't easy, obviously, but, if a lot of stuff's mental health related, you got to get people treatment. And they are starting to go more that way now in the courts, where they're actually doing like mental health diversion and trying to get people programs instead of just putting them in prison where they're not going to get any better, or drug addiction. A lot of crimes are based on drug addiction.
That's true.
So obviously it's better to treat people if you can, and and spend the money on, maybe there is a way to really deprogram sex offenders or something. Throwing them in prison is not going to help. Probably.
Well, yeah, and if
it keeps them incapacitated. Like it's one reason you have punishment is just to keep them away from society. So yeah, it serves that purpose.
Yes, yeah, and they usually, my understanding is they typically don't have a very fun time in prison.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
Sex offenders don't.
Which is really cruel and unusual punishment. Really, if you're like sentencing someone to be raped or murdered or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, not that obviously the courts can't control what other inmates might potentially do. But I mean, I can see how there'd be a serious argument that if the court was intentionally trying to get that to happen to the person, that might run afoul of the Eighth Amendment.
Well, yeah, they're not sentencing them to that,
right?
explicitly, but
no. Yeah. No, there's some likelihood of that happening, I suppose. Now, so when you talk about getting to the roots and how complicated that is of why these sorts of quality of life crimes, you could say, occur, are you of the view that there are I guess systemic social causes of crime waves like organized retail theft, things like that? Would that be kind of your argument or your view?
Well, I don't know about that. That's more like people wanting to commit crimes, but like things based on drug addiction or mental health. I think you can address that. Like, not everyone, there wasn't as much probably drug use at one point, things, it is something to do with society. And, that's something we should try to address. Obviously it's not an easy fix, or we would do it. Just like homelessness.
Right.
It's like, if we could fix it and real easily, it would be done. These things are hard, but it's at least better than, someone has some mental health problem and you send them to prison for 2 years for like something crazy they did. Yeah. They're going to be worse or the same. Whereas if you can get them into mental health treatment, hopefully they get better. It's,
it might give them a better shot if there were, medical professionals.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just they need to be on certain meds or whatever.
Yep.
And then drug addiction, people, do recover from drug addiction. Some people never do. Most people do sort of age out of like being a total whatever, not always, but but a lot of people stop doing drugs. And so a lot of crimes, more low level stuff is based on drug addiction.
Well, I'm definitely with you on the notion of the war on drugs being a really bad idea. I personally think the war on drugs is really just an excuse for the federal government in particular to grow, to become more powerful, to widen its scope, and to start to evolve into a police state.
Oh yeah.
When
marijuana is legal, they use that all the time to like do illegal. Like it was legal because they said, "Oh, we smelled marijuana," which a lot of times they didn't. They do it after the fact. They reverse engineer their search. Oh, they found marijuana. Now we have an excuse why we stopped this person for no reason.
Right.
But so like they can use that as a reason to search someone's whole car. So I see what you're saying. Like having these. Making things illegal just does widen the scope of the police state. So I totally agree with you there.
The DEA and the FBI, what have you, it seems to me that they're really addicted to any trend that might widen their ability to oppress the American citizen. Really, I mean, even if you take the National Firearms Act, for example, with the ATF, it really seems to me that that's a convenient tool for the ATF to criminalize anyone they might want to criminalize. That's how it looks to me, and I think the war on drugs would probably serve the same purpose for the DEA and to a lesser extent the FBI.
We were talking about this before the show, like civil forfeiture, is they use drugs all the time as an excuse to take people's cars and cash
or their boat, yacht. Yeah.
And so that's a whole other area. I don't really practice that. I have friends who do, and it's pretty crazy that those take your stuff, and then you have to fight for it to get returned. And some places make tons of money that way.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy.
And civil asset forfeiture at its core, what it really is it's a particularly insidious violation of due process of law. That's the issue with it. It's like if you want to confiscate somebody's property forcibly, it's like charge them with a crime. But with civil asset forfeiture, there's no criminal charge, or real probable cause required. They just kind of do it arbitrarily, and I think that's what.
I mean, you do get right to go to court and fight it. You have that due process, but you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that it would be better if there was a requirement to at least have an arrest warrant for the person to charge them with a crime before you can just seize their property like that.
Yeah, if you have cash just on a plane, they can just say, oh, you shouldn't have that much cash. It's actually illegal to bring a certain amount of cash on a plane.
More than $10,000, right?
Something like that.
At a time. Yeah.
And then almost all cash has like cocaine on it or something weird like that, so they can always say, oh, there's drugs. I don't know.
It's that would be my primary concern right there. I mean, civil asset forfeiture, red flag laws, it seems to me that qualified immunity, all of those are under the umbrella of police statism and denial of due process of law and violation of the equal protection clause. That's how I would group all of those.
Yeah.
Those topics, broadly speaking. But I'm sure as a defense attorney, you've had no shortage of personal experience dealing with some of the issues that
well, that's the other thing is like
those things.
People think the Gascon's so liberal, but whatever. And anytime I have an illegal search, I'll file a motion to suppress based on the Fourth Amendment violation. His deputies fight it tooth and nail, even though sometimes it's pretty obvious. And then judges rarely want to throw a case out based on an illegal search, especially if it's a serious case, if that's the only evidence they have. But yeah, so I mean, I think that was one of my platforms. I wasn't going to oppose righteous Fourth Amendment motions and equal protection motions too. And now there is this Racial Justice Act, so there might be some action there with trying to right some wrongs, but we'll see.
Yeah, quite so. The Racial Justice Act, I'm not so familiar with that part. Is that a state law?
Yeah, it's relatively new, and so we're not sure exactly how it's totally going to play out. But basically, if the government uses race to like increase a sentence or punish someone, or a lot of it's like in trial when the DA uses like racial language or coded language, and or they use rap lyrics, like that's sort of a thing now. Or like there's actually a law about when you can use rap lyrics, because it used to be used a lot. Because they say, oh, well, they're saying they're a criminal in their rap lyrics or whatever. So they must have, they use that against someone. Really, you wouldn't use that against Johnny Cash when he says like, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. Yeah. So like, but a rap person, oh, well, they said they shoot people, or I don't know. And now, but they said it the exact, they're talking about the actual crime. Of course, you could use that as like an admission or whatever. But
it's a specific reference.
Yeah. So there are changing stuff, and there's a lot of times in closing argument, DAs were using real racist language, and so sometimes those cases are trying to reopen some of those things like that.
Okay, I'll have to read up more. On that one right there, because I'm not as well read on that particular state law as I should be. But Dan, thank you so much tonight for coming on. To discuss these pressing issues, especially as they pertain locally here in LA County, California. I think a lot of what you brought up tonight is going to be on the minds of voters, so it's particularly relevant in these upcoming election cycles. And for everyone out there who watches, thank you so much as always for turning into CA PropCast. We're very excited to see you next time. I'm your host, Philip Young. And we'd like to thank Dan very much for coming on and providing his expert opinion and analysis here. And as always, until next time, God bless and sic semper tyrannis.
Yeah.